I adjusted the silverware for the third time, my fingers trembling slightly, not from fear but from excitement. The vanilla scent of the candles filled the dining room, warm and inviting. 5 years. We had made it to 5 years. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 8:15 p.m. He was late, but Mark was always working late. That was why I loved him. He was dedicated, driven, the perfect partner to help me manage the legacy my father had left behind. Tonight is going to be perfect, I whispered to the empty room. Just you and me, Mark. The sound of the front door unlocking made my heart leap. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and put on my brightest smile. Happy anniversary, darling, I called out, stepping into the hallway. I made your fave. The words died in my throat. Mark was there, yes. He was wearing his charcoal suit, the one I bought him for his birthday. But he wasn't smiling. His face was a mask of stone. And he wasn't alone. Chloe walked in behind him, my best friend. My sister and everything but blood. Chloe? I blinked, confusion swirling in my mind. What? What are you doing here? Is everything okay? Chloe didn't look at me. She looked at the floor, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. Mark didn't wait for her to answer. He walked past me, ignoring the candlelight, ignoring the dinner, ignoring me. He went straight to the coffee table and tossed a thick manila envelope onto the glass surface. Thwack. Sit down, Elena, Mark said. His voice was cold. Colder than I had ever heard it. Mark, what is going on? I asked, my voice rising in panic. I looked at Chloe again. Chloe, why aren't you saying anything? Just sit down, Elle, Chloe finally said. Her voice wasn't apologetic. It sounded bored. I sank onto the edge of the sofa, my hands gripping my knees. Is this a joke? Because it's not funny. Mark stood over me, loosening his tie. Open the envelope. Is this my anniversary gift? I reached for it, my hand shaking. In a way, Mark sneered. It's the gift of clarity. I tore the seal and pulled out the papers. My eyes scanned the bold letters at the top. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The ear left my lungs. Divorce? Mark, what? We were happy this morning. You kissed me goodbye. I tolerated you this morning, Mark corrected, crossing his arms. There's a difference. I don't understand, I stammered, tears stinging my eyes. Why? Is there someone else? I looked at Chloe. The realization hit me like a physical slap. She walked over to Mark and rested her hand on his arm. Possessively, familiar. You? I whispered. Chloe? Don't look so shocked, Chloe said, a small, cruel smile playing on her lips. Mark and I have been close for a long time. Since before your father died, actually, but why now? I choked out. Because the timeline is complete, Mark said calmly. Turn to page 12. Section 4, Clause B. I don't care about the clauses, I screamed, standing up. I care about my marriage, my life. Read it, Elena. Mark shouted, his voice booming off the walls. I froze. I looked down at the page. It was a transfer of assets document. Recognize that? Mark asked. You signed the power of attorney over to me 6 months ago. You trusted me to handle your father's estate tax. Yes, because you're my husband, I said, trembling. And that document gave me the right to restructure the family holdings, Mark said, his eyes gleaming with malice. As of this morning, 80% of the Vance Corporation belongs to me. You are a minority shareholder. You have no voting power. You have nothing. You stole my company? I gasped. My father's company? I earned it, Mark spat. I ran that place while you played house. And now I'm taking what's mine. You can't do this, I whispered. It's illegal. It's ironclad, Arthur said. I jumped. I hadn't even heard the lawyer walk in through the open door. Everything is legal, Elena. I looked from Mark to Chloe to Arthur. The betrayal wasn't just a crack. It was an earthquake. Get out, Mark said simply. This is my house, I cried. Not anymore, Chloe said, stepping closer to Mark, her head resting on his shoulder. She looked at me with pity that felt like acid. The deed was transferred last week. You really should read what you signed, honey. Mark checked his watch. You have 1 hour to pack a bag. After that, I'm changing the locks. I stood there, frozen. The candles in the dining room flickered and died, plunging the hallway into shadow. The man I loved was dead. The monster standing in front of me had been there all along. Arthur, look at me, I screamed, grabbing the lapel of his expensive suit. You held me at my baptism. You were my father's best friend. How can you stand there and let him do this? Arthur gently but firmly peeled my fingers off his jacket. He didn't look angry. He looked bored. Elena, please. Do not make this more difficult than it needs to be, Arthur said, adjusting his glasses. The documents are legally binding, but I didn't sign a transfer. I insisted, turning back to the papers Mark had thrown on the table. I signed tax audits. You told me they were for the IRS. I told you they were necessary financial restructurings, Arthur corrected smoothly. If you chose not to read the fine print on page 42, that is hardly my professional failing. You tricked me, I whispered, the room spinning. You buried a deed transfer in a tax audit. Mark laughed, a dry, sharp sound that cut through the tension. She never was one for details, was she, Arthur? Always too busy picking out curtains? Mark, stop, I said, my voice trembling. Just tell me this is a nightmare. It's reality, sweetheart, Mark said, stepping forward. And reality says you have 45 minutes left to get your things. Anything left behind goes to charity. Or the trash. You can't just kick me out, I cried. I have nowhere to go. My bank accounts? Frozen, Arthur interjected. Pending the finalization of the divorce assets, which, as per the prenuptial agreement modification you signed last year, are zero. I never signed a modification. You did, Mark smirked. That night we had too much champagne? You thought you were signing a receipt for the diamond necklace I bought you. You really should pay attention. Mark, I felt bile rise in my throat. Every kindness he had shown me over the last year was a trap. Every gift was a lure. Fine, I spat, wiping my eyes. Take the house. Take the money. I'll go stay with Lily at the care facility until I figure this out. Mark's smile widened. It was predatory. About Lily, my blood ran cold. What about my sister? That facility is very expensive, Elena, Mark said, examining his fingernails. Top-tier medical staff, 24-hour monitoring for her condition. It drains the trust fund quickly. So? I demanded. The trust is for her medical needs. You can't touch that. The trust was connected to the main family holding, Arthur explained, his voice devoid of emotion. When the holding transferred to Mark, it had control of the ancillary funds. Meaning? I breathed, my heart hammering against my ribs. Meaning I canceled the payments this morning, Mark said casually. I believe they said she has. What, 3 days before they discharge her? She can't survive outside that facility. I shrieked, lunging at him. She's on a ventilator half the day. You're killing her. Mark caught my wrists easily, shoving me back. I stumbled, falling hard onto the carpet. Then you better find a job fast, Mark sneered. The pride I had left evaporated. I didn't care about the money anymore. I scrambled forward on my knees, grabbing the hem of his pants. Mark, please, I begged, tears streaming down my face. Take everything else. I don't care. Just keep the funding for Lily. She's innocent. She's sick. Please, I'm begging you. I looked up at him, searching for a shred of the man I married. I saw only contempt. You look pathetic, Mark said. He kicked his leg out, shaking me off like a stray dog. Get your bag now. Mark. Arthur, call security, Mark commanded. If she isn't out in 10 minutes, drag her out. I didn't pack clothes. I didn't pack jewelry. I ran upstairs, grabbed a single suitcase, and threw in my mother's locket and the file regarding Lily's medication. 10 minutes later, the front door opened. Mark didn't say goodbye. He simply shoved me. I stumbled down the front steps, the heavy suitcase banging against my legs. The door slammed shut behind me, the lock clicking with a finality that echoed in my bones. Rain began to pour, icy and relentless. I stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the house that was mine an hour ago. Through the window, I saw Mark pouring champagne for Chloe. I shivered, the water soaking through my thin dress. I had no car, no money, and my sister's life was ticking away. I will kill you for this, I whispered to the rain. But my voice was lost in the storm. 100, 120, I counted the bills again, my fingers numb and clumsy. The cash was wet, crumpled, and pathetic. Yesterday, I spent more than this on a salad for lunch. Today, it was my entire net worth. The rain lashed against my face, mixing with the tears I couldn't stop. Every time I blinked, I saw Mark's smile. Not the cruel sneer from an hour ago, but the warm, loving smile he gave me on our wedding day. I promised to protect you, Elena, Always. The memory played on a loop, a twisted knife in my gut. Lear! I screamed into the traffic. A passing car honked, splashing dirty water onto my legs, soaking my stockings. I walked until my heels blistered and bled. The neon sign buzzed ahead. The Starlight Motel, the S&T were burnt out. Our light motel, fitting. I pushed the glass door open. A bell jingled, announcing my misery. The lobby smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. An older woman sat behind the glass partition, watching a small TV. She had gray hair pulled back tight and eyes that looked like they had seen everything twice. Room for one? She asked, not looking up. Yes, please, I said. My voice was raspy, broken. How much for a night? $40. Cash up front. No visitors after 10. She finally looked at me. Her eyes narrowed as she took in my soaked designer dress, the diamond studs in my ears, and the expensive suitcase dripping onto her linoleum floor. You in trouble, honey? I just need a room, I stammered, sliding the wet bills under the glass. She took the money slowly, counting it with deliberate care. I don't need a life story. Just don't bring the cops here. I'm Mrs. Higgins. I won't, I promised. Just a bed, please. She slapped a heavy key on the counter. Room 104, around back, and honey? I paused, grabbing the key, shivering violently. Yes? There's a vending machine by the ice. You look like you haven't eaten in a week. Her voice was rough, like sandpaper, but her eyes softened just a fraction. Thank you, I whispered. Room 104 was worse than I imagined. The wallpaper was peeling in long sunburned strips. The carpet was sticky. The air smelled of mildew. I dropped my suitcase and sat on the sagging mattress. The silence of the room was louder than the storm outside. This is it, I said to the empty air. This is where I end. I curled into a ball, hugging my knees. The cold seeped into my bones. Why fight? Mark had the money, the lawyers, the power. He had Arthur. He had the company. I was nobody. I was a homeless woman in a $40 room. I reached for my purse to turn off my phone, intending to sleep until the money ran out. My fingers brushed against the leather wallet. I opened it. Lily's face smiled back at me from behind the plastic window. She was sitting in her wheelchair, laughing at a joke I'd made. 3 days. Mark said she had 3 days. If I gave up, the machines turned off. If I stayed in this bed and cried, my sister died. It was that simple. I sat up. The shivering stopped. I stared at the peeling wallpaper, but I didn't see the grime anymore. I saw Mark's face when he kicked me out. I saw the smirk on Chloe's lips. They thought I was weak. They thought I would fade away in the dark. No, I said. My voice was steady now. It sounded foreign to my own ears. I walked to the cracked mirror above the sink. My mascara was smeared, my hair a rat's nest. But the eyes staring back weren't the eyes of a victim anymore. They were cold, dead calm. You wanted a war, Mark? I whispered to my reflection, gripping the edge of the sink until my knuckles turned white. I'll give you a war. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to take back everything. Every cent, every brick, and I would make him watch. 12 hours. I had been standing on the pavement for 12 hours. My legs felt like lead, and the bitter wind bit through my thin coat, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I clutched the manila folder to my chest. It contained 5 pages of business proposal I had printed at the public library with my last few dollars. It was a gamble. No, it was a suicide mission. You can't stand here, miss, the security guard grunted, stepping out of the glass booth again. I told you, Mr. Blackwood doesn't see walk-ins. I'm not a walk-in, I said, my voice hoarse but steady. I'm a shareholder. You look like a vagrant, he scoffed, hand resting on his belt. Move along before I call the cops. Just then the automatic doors slid open. A group of men in sharp suits walked out, surrounding a tall figure in the center. Julian Blackwood. He looked exactly like the pictures in the financial magazines, only more terrifying. He wore a long black coat and his eyes were sharp, scanning the street like a predator. He was my father's greatest rival, a man known for eating weak companies alive. He was my only hope. Mr. Blackwood, I shouted, lunging forward. The guard grabbed my arm hard. That's it. You're done. Wait, I struggled against the guard's grip. Julian didn't even look at me. He continued walking toward the waiting limousine. Julian, ask Mark about the Singapore ledger. Julian stopped. The air around the building seemed to freeze. The men around him halted, confused. Julian turned slowly, his gaze locking onto me. It felt like being stared down by a wolf. "Let her go," Julian said. His voice was low, smooth, and dangerous. The guard released me instantly, stepping back. "Sir, she's just—" "I heard what she said," Julian interrupted. He walked over to me, towering over my shivering frame. "Who are you?" "Elena Vance," I said, straightening my spine. "James Vance's daughter." Julian's eyes narrowed. "James is dead. And from what I hear, his daughter is a spoiled socialite who just lost everything." "You heard right," I said, refusing to look away. "I lost the house. I lost the money. I lost 80% of the company." "Then you have nothing to offer me," he said, turning away. "Go home, Miss Vance. I have the other 20%. I yelled at his back. He stopped again. He turned his head slightly. "Excuse me?" "Mark owns 80%, I said, stepping closer, ignoring the cold. "But my father's will protected the founding shares. The 20% that holds veto power on board restructuring. Mark couldn't steal those. They're still mine." Julian turned fully to face me, and I held out the crumbled folder. "And I want to trade them." Julian looked at the folder, then at my face. He didn't take it. "You want to sell your birthright for cash? To buy your way back into a penthouse?" "No," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I don't want money. I don't want a penthouse." "Then what do you want?" "I want you to help me destroy him," I said. The hatred in my voice surprised even me. "I want to burn Mark Vance to the ground. I have the voting power, but I don't have the influence or the capital to fight him." "You do." Julian stared at me for a long moment. He looked at my ragged clothes, my messy hair, and finally my eyes. He was searching for weakness. "He betrayed your father's legacy," Julian said softly. "He destroyed my life," I corrected. "I don't care about the legacy anymore. I care about revenge." Julian's lips curved into a small, terrifying smile. He reached out and took the folder from my hand. "Get in the car," he said. "What?" I blinked. "We have work to do," Julian said, opening the car door himself. "And you can't kill a CEO looking like that." I looked at the warm interior of the limousine, then back at the cold street where I had almost died. I stepped inside. "Posture," Julian snapped from the corner of the room. "Shoulders back, chin up." "You look like a kicked puppy." I straightened my spine, glaring at him. "I've been reading these financial reports for 3 days straight, Julian." "My eyes are burning." "Mark doesn't care about your eyes," Julian said, pouring himself a drink. "He cares about weakness. If you walk into that boardroom looking like Elena, he will destroy you again." "I'm not Elena anymore," I muttered, dropping the file on the desk. "Prove it." He threw a pair of silver scissors onto the mahogany desk. They clattered loudly, the sound echoing in the penthouse. Elena had long hair that her husband loved to play with. Elena wore pastels. Elena was sweet. I picked up the scissors. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling mirror. I looked at the woman who had cried in the rain outside the motel. I hated her. She was weak. She trusted people. Snip. A long lock of chestnut hair fell to the marble floor. "Keep going," Julian commanded softly, not looking away. I hacked away the softness. I cut until my neck felt cold and exposed. When I was done, a sharp, angled bob framed my face. I looked older, harder, better, Julian noted. "Now the clothes." He pointed to a rack of suits he had ordered. Sharp blacks, deep reds, tailored specifically to intimidate. I put on a fitted black blazer. It felt like armor. "Now," Julian said, opening his laptop. "Tell me what you see in Mark's latest filing." I leaned over the screen, my eyes scanning the numbers I'd memorized. Vance Corp is acquiring a tech startup in Silicon Valley. And the startup has 0 assets, I realized, narrowing my eyes. It's a shell company. Mark is buying it to inflate the quarterly projections. Exactly, Julian smiled. It was the first time I had seen him look impressed. He's letting his ego drive the car. He wants to look like a tycoon, but he's just a thief with a checkbook. "He's going to crash the company," I said, a thrill of realization running through me. "Not if someone guides him off the cliff," Julian corrected. "He needs a consultant. Someone to validate his bad ideas until it's too late." "Me?" I asked. "No," Julian handed me a pair of thick-rimmed, non-prescription glasses. "Elle." I put them on. I looked in the mirror again. Elena was gone. Elle stared back cold, calculating and ready for blood. "It's time," I said. Just then, the news ticker on the large TV flashed red. "Breaking CEO Mark Vance to marry childhood sweetheart." I froze. On the screen, Mark was holding Chloe's hand, showing off a diamond ring. The ring was bigger than mine had been. Chloe was beaming, looking at him with that fake adoration I used to believe was real. "Are you going to cry?" Julian asked, watching me closely. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but it wasn't heartbreak. It was fuel. Pure, high-octane hatred. "No," I said. I walked over to the wedding invitation that had arrived that morning, sent to Julian, of course. I took a letter opener and stabbed the invitation into the corkboard on the wall. "He thinks he's won," I whispered. "He thinks I'm dead, and that is why you will win," Julian said. I turned to him, my voice devoid of emotion. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow," Julian said, clinking his glass against the air. "Prepare yourself, Elle. The game begins. Mr. Vance will see you now." I nodded at the receptionist. She didn't recognize me, why would she? The mousy woman who used to bring homemade cookies to the front desk was dead. In her place stood Elle, sharp bob, crimson lips, and a suit that cost more than this woman's car. I pushed open the heavy oak doors I had picked out myself 3 years ago. Mark was standing by the window, his back to me. He was shouting into his phone. "I don't care about the overhead, just fire the damn team if they can't deliver." He hung up and spun around. His eyes swept over me, pausing for a fraction of a second on my face. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands remained steady at my sides. "Who are you?" he asked, tossing his phone onto the desk. "I'm Elle," I said, my voice dropping an octave lower than he was used to. "Julian Blackwood said you needed a shark." Mark laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Julian? He's a dinosaur. Why is he sending me consultants?" "Because he hears rumors," I lied smoothly, walking further into the room without being invited. "Rumors that your new acquisition is draining your liquidity. He thinks you're going to crash. I'm here to prove him wrong." Mark narrowed his eyes. "And why would you help me?" "I don't care about you, Mr. Vance," I said, placing my portfolio on his desk. "I care about winning, and fixing a sinking ship like this? That's a win for my resume." He looked at me, really looked at me. "You look familiar." "I have one of those faces," I said dismissively. "Now, do you want to save your quarter, or do you want to keep staring at me?" Mark smirked. His ego loved the challenge. "You have 5 minutes." "Impress me, cut the R&D department," I said immediately. "It's a money pit. Outsource the production to the firm in Vietnam I've listed on page 3. It's risky, but it cuts costs by 40% instantly. The board will see green arrows next week." Mark picked up the file, scanning the numbers. "That's aggressive." "It's necessary," I countered. "Unless you want to explain the losses at the gala next month." He closed the file. The greed in his eyes was unmistakable. "You're hired." "Consulting basis. Don't make me regret it." "You won't," I said. "But you will," I thought. I turned on my heel and walked out. As I entered the outer hallway, a young woman hurried past me, her head down. She collided with my shoulder, dropping a stack of files. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, dropping to her knees to gather the papers. I looked down. It was Sarah. Her mascara was running down her cheeks. From inside the office, Mark's voice boomed. "Sarah, where is my coffee? If you're incompetent, just leave." Sarah flinched as if he had hit her. I crouched down, helping her gather the papers. "He's in a mood today. He's always in a mood," she sniffed, wiping her eyes. "I can't do anything right. It's not you," I said softly, handing her a file. "It's him. Men like that need to make others feel small to feel big." Sarah looked up at me, surprised by the kindness. I just need this job. My mom is sick." I smiled warmly. "I know a place downstairs that makes excellent calming tea." "Come on, I'm buying." "I can't," she whispered, glancing at the door. "He'll fire me. I just saved him $2 million inside that office," I said confidently. "He won't fire you if you're with me. Come." 10 minutes later, we were in the cafe. Sarah held the warm cup with both hands, her shoulders finally relaxing. "You really stood up to him in there?" she asked in awe. "He's a bully, Sarah. You have to speak their language." I took a sip of my black coffee. "But you see everything, don't you? The schedules, the emails, the accounts." She went rigid. I just do what I'm told. I know, I said, leaning in. But I also know that the numbers he's showing the board don't match the numbers in those files you dropped. Sarah's eyes widened. How did you... I'm good at puzzles, I whispered. And I know he's cooking the books. He's making you hide the debt, isn't he? She looked around the cafe, terrified. Then she looked at me. She saw a savior. She didn't know I was an inventor. He makes me create dual spreadsheets, Sarah confessed, her voice shaking. One for the investors and one for the real bank accounts. If anyone finds out, I'll go to jail. Not if we fix it, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. I can help you, Sarah, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, I hate him. I'll do whatever you want, I smiled. The Trojan horse was inside the gates. Mr. Vance, with all due respect, the liquidity simply isn't there, Mark said, leaning back in his chair with the arrogant smirk I wanted to slap off his face. The older man at the end of the long mahogany table scowled. Mr. Vance, Mark's uncle, was the only board member with a spine left. He had built this company alongside my father, and I could see the disgust in his eyes as he looked at his nephew. You're gutting the pension fund to pay for a marketing campaign, Mark, Mr. Vance grumbled, tapping his pen aggressively against the glass table. It's short-sighted. James would never have approved this. James is dead, Mark countered coldly. And the pension fund is dead weight. Elle, tell him. I stood up, smoothing my pencil skirt. The room fell silent. This was the moment. Actually, I said, turning my gaze to the older man, Mr. Vance raises a valid concern regarding the optics. If we touch the pension fund now, the union strikes. The stock dips. Mark frowned at me, his brow furrowing. I thought you said we needed capital? We do, I said smoothly, pivoting the trap. But instead of the pension, we should liquidate the commercial real estate assets in the Southern District. It provides immediate cash flow without the PR nightmare. I knew, of course, that the Southern District properties were the only solid collateral keeping the company's credit rating afloat. Selling them was financial suicide in the long term. But today? It looked like genius. Mr. Vance nodded slowly, meeting my eyes. He saw logic. He didn't see the poison pill. Finally, someone with sense. Fine, Mark waved his hand dismissively, clearly bored with the details. Sell the properties, just get me the cash. I suppressed a smile. I had just won the uncle's trust and doomed the company's future in one breath. Later that afternoon, I found myself alone in Mark's office. He was down the hall yelling at a vendor. I walked over to his trench coat hanging on the rack. My heart didn't even race anymore. My nerves were steel. I pulled a small receipt from my pocket of fake I printed for a diamond bracelet worth $10,000 and slipped it into his inner pocket. Then I took a small vial of perfume Midnight Rose, a sickly scent Chloe despised, and misted the collar. Just as I capped the vial, the door handle turned. Mark walked in, rubbing his temples. This day, he groaned, collapsing onto the leather sofa. I need a drink. Rough meeting? I asked, pouring him a scotch. I handed it to him, my fingers brushing his. It's not the work, he sighed, loosening his tie. It's home. Chloe called me 10 times during the presentation. She loves you, I said, keeping my voice neutral as I sat on the edge of his desk. She's just attentive. She's paranoid, Mark corrected, downing the drink in one gulp. She asks where I am every second. It's suffocating. I miss peace. I miss sanity. Maybe she feels you pulling away, I suggested softly. Women have intuition, Mark. She's crazy, he muttered, looking up at me. You know, you're different, Elle. You get it. You don't need constant validation. You focus on the goal. I focus on what matters, I said, my voice silky. I wish she was more like you, he said, his gaze lingering on me. I felt a wave of revulsion, but I forced a smile. Go home, Mark. Take your coat. Maybe buy her some flowers to calm her down. He stood up and grabbed the coat, the one smelling of another woman. She doesn't deserve flowers today. Go on, I urged. Don't keep her waiting. He left. I watched the door close, checking my watch. It would take him 30 minutes to get home. 30 minutes until Chloe smelled the perfume. 30 minutes until she found the receipt for jewelry she never received. I sat in his chair, spinning it slowly. He was walking straight into a hurricane, and I had just handed him the lightning rod. Enjoy your evening, darling, I whispered to the empty room. It might be your last quiet one. The projected growth for the next quarter is aggressive but sustainable, Mark said, gesturing to the charts I had prepared. He looked confident, almost regal at the head of the table. Mr. Henderson, the lead investor from the Capital Group, nodded slowly. And the liquidity issues? Rumors are circulating, Mr. Vance. Rumors are just noise, Mark smiled, opening his mouth to lie. Bang! The glass doors to the conference room slammed open, bouncing off the walls with a violence that made Mr. Henderson jump. Mark froze. We all turned. Chloe stood in the doorway. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup smeared, and she was shaking with the rage that filled the room. In her hand, she crumbled a piece of paper. Chloe? Mark stammered, his face draining of color. I am in a meeting. Get out. You bought her a bracelet? Chloe shrieked, ignoring the 5 men in expensive suits staring at her. She threw the crumpled receipt at him. It bounced off his chest. $10,000, Mark. I found the receipt in your pocket. Chloe, stop this. Mark hissed, rushing around the table to grab her arm. You're hysterical. And the perfume. She screamed, pulling away from him. Your coat reeks of it. Midnight Rose. Who is she? Is it your secretary? Is it her? She pointed a trembling finger at me. I didn't flinch. I sat perfectly still, my expression one of professional concern. This is unacceptable, Mr. Henderson muttered, gathering his papers. We are discussing millions of dollars, and this circus is happening? Mark looked like a trapped animal. He was sweating. Gentlemen, please, my fiancé is not feeling well. I'm not sick, I'm furious. Chloe yelled. I stood up. I didn't shout. I didn't panic. I simply walked over to the investors. Mr. Henderson, gentlemen, I said, my voice calm and authoritative. I apologize deeply for the interruption. Mr. Vance is under a lot of personal stress. Why don't we move to the executive lounge? I've just had fresh espresso brought up. I can walk you through the risk assessment myself. Mr. Henderson looked at Mark, who was currently wrestling his screaming fiancée, and then at me. He saw chaos, and then he saw control. Lead the way, Miss Elle, Henderson said coldly. At least someone here is professional. As I ushered the investors out, I looked back. Mark was staring at me, humiliation burning in his eyes. I gave him a small, reassuring nod, the dutiful consultant saving our boss. Inside, I was laughing. 2 hours later, the office was quiet. Mark had dragged Chloe home, presumably to scream at her in private. I sat in the dim light of the break room. Did anyone see you come in? I asked softly. Sarah slid into the seat across from me. She looked terrified, clutching a USB drive. No, she whispered. He left early, he was. He was shaking, Elle. I've never seen him look so scared. Fear makes people sloppy, I said, holding out my hand. Do you have it? Sarah hesitated for a second, then dropped the drive into my palm. It was warm. It's all there, she said, her voice trembling. The payments to Arthur labeled as legal retainers, $50,000 a month, and the transfers from the employee pension fund to his personal offshore accounts. He's embezzling to pay the lawyer who helped him steal my company, I murmured, clutching the drive. It's poetic. If he finds out I gave you this. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. He won't, I promised, reaching out to grip her hand tight. Because by the time he realizes what's happening, he won't have the power to fire anyone. You did good, Sarah. You just saved yourself. Is it over? She asked. Almost, I said, standing up. Go home, rest. Tomorrow we burn it down. The machine beeped rhythmically in the quiet room. Beep, beep. I sat by the bed, the USB drive heavy in my pocket. Willie looked peaceful, her chest rising and falling with the help of the ventilator. Julian had arranged for the best private care, far away from Mark's reach. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Her skin was warm. Hey, Lil, I whispered. I wish you could see me now. You'd probably tell me my hair looks too severe. I leaned in closer, resting my forehead against her hand. I saw him today, I told her, my voice cracking just a little. I saw him panic. He looked small. He looked weak. I squeezed her fingers. He took your safety away to buy his freedom, I whispered fiercely. So I'm going to take his freedom to buy your future. I kissed her knuckles and stood up, the cold rage settling back into my chest like a familiar friend. Sleep well, Lily. When you wake up, everything will be ours again. Red, I chose red because it is the color of blood. It is the color of war. I smoothed the silk of my gown, checking my reflection in the limousine window one last time. The woman staring back wasn't the crying girl from the motel. She was a weapon sheathed in silk. "You look dangerous," Julian said, offering me his arm as the driver opened the door. "That's the point," I replied, stepping out into the flash of cameras. The ballroom was suffocatingly opulent. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and greed. Every major player in the city was here to hear Mark announce his record-breaking profits. "Smile," Julian whispered. "The wolf is approaching." Mark walked toward us, a glass of champagne in his hand. He looked triumphant. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than Lily's medical bills for a year. Elle. "Julian," Mark beamed, his face flushed with adrenaline. "I'm glad you can make it. Tonight is going to be historic." "It certainly will be," Julian said dryly. "I hear the numbers are unbelievable." "They are spectacular," Mark bragged, rocking on his heels. "We've turned the ship around just like you said we would." "Elle, I merely gave you the map, Mark," I said, my voice smooth and detached. "You're the one who drove the ship, and drove it well," he laughed. "Excuse me, I need to greet the senator." As he walked away, I saw him high-five a board member. He had no idea the ship he was driving was already underwater. "Go," Julian said quietly, releasing my arm. "I'll keep him distracted." "You find the weak link." "Arthur," I whispered. I scanned the room. I saw Detective Miller standing near the bar, looking out of place in his cheap suit. He was nursing a soda, his eyes scanning the crowd. He was waiting for my signal, but first I needed the final nail in the coffin. I found Arthur standing near a pillar, wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. He looked like a man waiting for the executioner. I walked up behind him. "Enjoying the champagne, Arthur?" He jumped, spilling a drop of golden liquid on his cuff. "Elle, you startled me." "You look nervous," I observed, standing close enough that he had to look at me. "Is it the heat or the guilt?" He laughed nervously. "I don't know what you mean." "It's a celebration." "Is it?" I took a sip of my drink, staring him down. "I saw the internal transfer logs, Arthur." "The Cayman accounts." Arthur froze. His face went pale, draining of all color. That's privileged information." "You can't possibly." "I have copies," I interrupted, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "And I know about the original will." "The one you hid." Arthur looked around wildly, searching for an exit. "You're crazy." "Mark said you were just a consultant." "I am a consultant," I smiled, stepping closer. "And I'm consulting you to save your own skin." I pointed toward the bar with my glass. "See that man in the gray suit? That is Detective Miller from the Fraud Division. He has a warrant in his pocket." Arthur began to tremble visibly. "Mark told me it was safe. He said he handled it." "Mark lied," I said. "Mark is going to prison tonight, Arthur. The only question is, are you going with him?" I have a family," Arthur stammered, his eyes filling with tears of panic. "I can't go to jail." "Then give me the will," I demanded. "The original one. The one that proves Mark stole Elena Vance's inheritance." He stared at me, confusion warring with fear. "Why do you care about Elena Vance?" "That doesn't matter," I hissed. "You have 30 seconds. Turn state's witness, give me the document, and I tell Miller to cut you a deal. Or you stay silent and you go down for embezzlement and fraud. Choose." Arthur looked at Mark, who was laughing across the room, oblivious to his doom. Then he looked at Detective Miller, who was checking his watch. "It's in my safe," Arthur whispered, his voice broken. "The original will. And the recording of Mark ordering me to hide it." "Good," I said, feeling a surge of triumph. "Go to Miller now. What are you going to do?" Arthur asked, looking at me with terrified awe. I turned my gaze back to the stage where Mark was stepping up to the microphone. "Me?" I smoothed my red dress. "I'm going to watch the show. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests." Mark's voice boomed through the speakers. He stood center stage, bathing in the applause, his smile plastered on like a mask. "Tonight we celebrate not just profit but vision." I stood in the wings, hidden by the heavy velvet curtain. My heart wasn't racing. It was a steady, heavy drum of anticipation. I looked up at the control booth balcony. Sarah was there, barely visible in the shadows. She looked terrified, her hand hovering over the keyboard. I caught her eye and nodded once. "Do it?" "If you look at the screen behind me," Mark said, gesturing grandly with his champagne glass, "you will see the trajectory of our unprecedented success." The massive LED screen flickered. The polished blue graph illustrating Q4 growth vanished. A static buzz echoed through the speakers, making the front row wince. "What the—" Mark muttered, tapping the microphone. "Technical difficulties, folks." Just a moment. Then the image stabilized. It wasn't a graph, it was an email chain. The font was huge, crisp, and damning. From Mark Vance to Arthur Penelligon subject. The idiot investor's message: Henderson and the board are clueless. Divert the pension funds to the Cayman account tonight. Once the shell company folds, they'll blame the economy. A gasp tore through the ballroom. It started as a ripple and turned into a wave of murmurs. Is that my name?" Mr. Henderson shouted from the front row, standing up so fast his chair fell over. "Mark?" "What is this?" Mark spun around. He stared at the screen. His face went gray. "Turn it off," Mark shrieked, his voice cracking. "It's a hack. It's a deep fake. Cut the power." The screen changed again. Now it showed a bank transfer receipt. Amount: $5 million. Recipient: Mark Vance Personal. That's the employee severance fund. A woman screamed from the back. "It's a lie." Mark yelled, looking wild-eyed, scanning the darkness. "Security. Find whoever is doing this." "No need to look far, Mark," I said. My voice was calm, amplified by the lavalier mic I had clipped to my dress moments ago. Mark whipped his head around. "Elle? Thank God. What are you doing?" "Fix this." I walked out from the curtain. The click of my heels on the stage floor was the only sound in the room. "Elle can't fix this," I said, stopping 3 feet from him. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a wet wipe. Slowly, deliberately, I scrubbed the dark crimson lipstick away. I took the heavy, black-framed glasses off my face and dropped them. They shattered on the stage floor. Crunch. I looked him dead in the eye. "Hello, Mark," I said. He squinted, confused. Then recognition hit him like a physical blow. He stumbled back, gripping the podium for support. "Elena," he whispered. No, that's impossible. You're nobody." "Did you think I would stay dead?" I asked, my voice hard as steel. "Did you think you could throw me away like trash and I wouldn't come back?" "You," Mark pointed a shaking finger at me, "you did this. You set me up." "I didn't set you up," I said coldly. "I just turned on the lights." "She's lying." Mark screamed to the crowd, sweat pouring down his forehead. "She's a crazy ex-wife. She's jealous of my success." "We've seen enough, Mr. Vance." A deep voice cut through the chaos. The double doors at the back of the room burst open. Detective Miller marched in, his badge raised high. Behind him were 4 uniformed officers. "Step away from the microphone," Miller ordered. "You can't touch me." Mark yelled, panic taking over completely. "I am the CEO of this company. I own this city." "Not anymore," Mr. Henderson shouted from the floor. "You're fired." Miller grabbed Mark's arm, spinning him around. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the silent room. "Mark Vance, you are under arrest for grand larceny, securities fraud, and embezzlement," Miller recited. Mark looked at me, tears of rage streaming down his face. "Elena, please." "Tell them, we can fix this. I can pay you back." I leaned into the microphone one last time. "The show is over, Mark." As the officers dragged him away, the flashbulbs exploded like fireworks. The crowd erupted into chaos, shouting questions. But I stood center stage, alone in the spotlight, listening to the symphony of his destruction. "Get your hands off me, do you know who I am?" Mark screamed, his voice cracking as he thrashed against the 2 officers holding him. "I am the CEO. I command you to release me." "You have the right to remain silent," Detective Miller said calmly, tightening the cuffs. "I suggest you use it." "I didn't do it," Mark yelled, his eyes darting frantically around the room. "It was her. It was my fiancée. Chloe handled the accounts." The crowd gasped. I watched from the stage, unmoving. Chloe, who had been trying to sneak toward the exit, froze. The camera swung toward her instantly, a wall of flashing lights blinding her. "Me?" Chloe shrieked, her face twisting into a mask of pure panic. She lunged at Mark, clawing at his tuxedo. "You liar, you told me the money was a bonus." "I didn't know anything. You spent half of it on jewelry." Mark spat, trying to kick her away. "You told me to cook the books so we could buy the yacht. Don't you dare pin this on me." "I am a victim here." Chloe screamed at the reporters, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "He manipulated me." He forced me to sign those papers. I was afraid of him. You parasite, Mark roared. He's a monster. Chloe sobbed, turning to the nearest camera. I just wanted to be a good wife. I didn't know he was a criminal. It was pathetic. It was perfect. The rats were eating each other. Mark looked up then. He stopped fighting the officers. His eyes locked onto mine. I stood above him on the stage, the red dress flowing around me like a pool of blood. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just watched. You, Mark growled, a guttural sound rising from his chest. You planned this, you bitch. You witch, he lunged. With a surge of hysterical strength, he broke free from one officer's grip and charged toward the stage. I'll kill you, Mark screamed, his face purple with rage. I'll kill you with my own hands. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. Julian stepped in front of me. He didn't look like a businessman anymore. He looked like a wall. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood there, his presence radiating a cold, lethal warning. Take one more step, Mark, Julian said softly, and the police won't be the ones you have to worry about. Mark skidded to a halt at the bottom of the stairs. The officers tackled him from behind, slamming his face into the carpet. Arg, my arm. Mark howled. They held him up, dragging him toward the exit. The fight drained out of him as reality set in. He looked at the handcuffs. He looked at the jeering crowd. Then he looked at me again. The rage vanished, replaced by a terrifying, desperate hope. Elena, he cried out, his voice breaking into a sob. Elena, wait. Tell them to stop. I walked to the edge of the stage, looking down at him. Elena, please. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the snot and sweat. It's me, it's Mark. I'm your husband. I love you. You can't let them take me to prison. You love me? I asked. My voice was quiet, but in the sudden silence of the ballroom, it carried like a bell. Yes, I always loved you. Mark begged, struggling to turn his head to see me as they dragged him backward. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. We can fix this. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Elena, please, for us. I looked at the man on his knees. I searched my heart for satisfaction, for joy, even for pity. There was nothing. Just a vast, empty silence. Elena is gone, I said, my voice flat and final. What? No, Elena. I turned my back on him. You killed her. The door slammed shut, cutting off his screams. Miss Vance, the restructuring plan for the Asian markets is ready for your signature. I looked up from the mahogany desk, my father's desk. Sarah stood in the doorway, her spine straight, holding a tablet against her chest. There were no more tear tracks on her face, no more flinching. She wore a tailored navy suit I had bought her. She looked like an executive. Stop calling me Miss Vance, Sarah, I said, uncapping my pen. It's Elena. Old habits, she smiled, walking over to place the tablet in front of me. But you have to admit it sounds right. Better than the last person who sat in that chair. Speaking of the last person, I signed the digital document with a flourish. Any news from the lawyers? The appeal was denied an hour ago, Sarah said, her voice filled with a quiet, savage satisfaction. The judge threw the book at him. Evidence tampering, fraud, perjury, embezzlement. He's looking at 25 years minimum. Without parole. 25 years, I repeated, staring at the ink on the page. He'll be an old man when he gets out. If he lasts that long, Sarah noted grimly. Prison isn't kind to men who steal from pension funds. And Chloe? I asked, handing the tablet back. I almost feel bad for her, I lied. Almost. She tried to sell an interview to the tabloids, Sarah chuckled. They turned her down. Said she's old news. Last I heard, she was moving back in with her parents in Ohio. The creditors took the condo, the car, even the ring. She's working retail. Justice is a slow wheel, I murmured, leaning back in the leather chair. But it grinds fine. You have a visitor, Sarah said, stepping back toward the door. And then you need to go. Lily is waiting. How is she? She walked 10 steps today without the walker, Sarah beamed. She wants to show you. She asked if you were bringing the scary handsome man with you. I laughed, a sound that felt genuine for the first time in months. Tell her I'll be there in 20 minutes. Sarah left, closing the heavy oak door softly. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city sprawled out beneath me, a glittering grid of lights and steel. 3 months ago, I was down there in the freezing rain, crying over a man who never loved me, Now I own the skyline. You changed the curtains. I didn't turn around. I knew that voice. It was the voice that had pulled me out of the darkness. The old ones were too heavy, I said, watching the traffic below. I wanted to let the light in. Julian walked up beside me. He didn't look at the view. He looked at me. He wasn't wearing his usual intimidating trench coat. He looked relaxed. You look tired, Elena. It's a good tired, I replied. The kind you get from building something, not from having it stolen. Mark sent a letter from his cell, Julian said quietly. Burn it, I said instantly. I already did, Julian smiled, leaning against the glass. I just thought you should know, he's broken. He spends his days crying about how you tricked him. He broke himself, I said, finally turning to face him. I just handed him the hammer. Julian studied my face, his dark eyes searching for cracks in the armor. He reached out, his thumb grazing the sharp line of my jaw. You're different now, he murmured. The softness, the girl who waited in the cold. She's gone. Softness got me evicted, I said, my voice steady. Softness almost killed my sister. I traded it for armor. Armor is heavy, Julian said. You can take it off sometimes. Maybe, I whispered, but not today. And now? He asked, stepping closer, invading my space in that way only he could. You have the company. You have the power. You have your revenge. Are you happy? I looked down at my hands. They were steady. I thought about the scars on my heart, the trust I would never fully give again. I wasn't the girl who cooked anniversary dinners and believed in fairy tales. That girl was dead. But the woman standing here, she was a survivor. She was a warrior. I looked up at Julian, seeing the respect and the heat in his gaze. Happiness is a simple word, Julian, I said softly. It feels too small for this. So, is that a no? I took his hand, squeezing it firmly. The warmth of his skin grounded me. I'm not just happy, I told him, a genuine smile finally breaking through the ice. I am free.